I stood in the middle of my daughter's wedding reception, surrounded by 300 guests who had all gone silent. Emma, my only child, stood there in her $12,000 gown, her face twisted with rage as she pointed at me and screamed that I had stolen the wedding gift money from the gift table. The groom's family stared in horror. Her final words cut like glass. "Get out. You're not family anymore." I turned and walked out into the night, head held high, while whispers followed me like ghosts. Let me take you back 6 months, to where this nightmare really began. My name is Aleda, and am 64 years old. I've been a widow for 8 years now, ever since my husband passed away from a sudden heart attack. I raised Emma alone from the time she was 14, working as an elementary school teacher in our small town in suburban Ohio. It wasn't always easy, but we made it work. I thought we were close. I thought I knew my daughter. I live in a modest 3-bedroom house that my husband and I bought 30 years ago. It's not fancy, but it's paid off and full of memories. The wallpaper in the kitchen is outdated, the carpet could use replacing, and the appliances are from another era, but it's home. I worked double shifts for years to put Emma through college, to make sure she had every opportunity I could give her. She graduated with honors, got a good job in marketing, and I was so proud. Then she met Brandon. He was a commercial real estate developer from a wealthy family in Connecticut. When Emma called to tell me about him, her voice had a breathless quality I'd never heard before. "He's amazing, Mom. His family is incredible. They have a house in the Hamptons and another one in Aspen. Can you believe it?" I was happy for her. I wanted her to find love. But I started noticing changes almost immediately. She began dressing differently, in expensive clothes with designer labels. Her vocabulary shifted. She started using phrases like investment portfolio and country club and networking opportunities. Even her accent seemed to change, becoming more polished, more refined, less like the girl who grew up playing in our backyard. When Emma announced her engagement, I cried tears of joy. My baby was getting married. She asked me to meet Brandon's parents over dinner at an upscale steakhouse in the city. I drove an hour and a half to get there, wearing my best dress, the navy blue one I'd bought for my cousin's funeral 2 years earlier. It was the nicest thing I owned. Richard and Constance arrived in a black Mercedes. Richard was tall and distinguished with silver hair and an expensive suit. Constance wore pearls and a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. They shook my hand with polite smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. The dinner was uncomfortable from the first moment. Constance asked about my career with a tone that made teaching sound quaint. "Oh, elementary school, how sweet. That must be so rewarding." She emphasized the word rewarding in a way that clearly meant not lucrative. She asked pointed questions about my neighborhood, my house, my retirement plans. Each question felt like a test I was failing. Richard was polite but distant, assessing me the way you might evaluate a used car you're not sure about buying. He asked about my late husband's profession. When I said had been a factory supervisor, Richard nodded slowly and changed the subject. The worst part was watching Emma. She laughed, along with Constance's veiled insults. When I mentioned a funny story from Emma's childhood about the time she tried to give our cat a bath in the kitchen sink, Emma's face flushed red. "Mom, they don't need to hear about that." Her voice was sharp, embarrassed. Brandon seemed nice enough, but he was clearly under his parents' influence. He kept glancing at his mother for approval whenever he spoke. The real blow came when they started discussing the wedding. Constance took control immediately. "We're thinking the Rosewood estate. It's where all the best families hold their events. We'll need at least 300 guests. Richard's business associates, our country club friends, the yacht club members." She rattled off details about ice sculptures and 12-piece orchestras and imported flowers. I tried to contribute. That sounds beautiful. I'd love to help however I can. I have some money saved, about $15,000. I want to contribute to my daughter's wedding. The table went silent. Constance looked at me with something close to pity. That's very sweet, Alida. But that won't even cover the flowers. We have the wedding fully budgeted at $200,000. We'll be handling everything. Emma didn't defend me. She didn't say that my contribution mattered. She just sipped her wine and looked uncomfortable. After dinner, Emma pulled me aside in the parking lot. Mom, I need to ask you something. When we send out invitations, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't invite too many people from your side. Brandon's family has very specific expectations for the guest list, and we need to maintain a certain aesthetic. I felt like I'd been slapped. Aesthetic? Emma, these are my friends, people who watched you grow up. I know, but they wouldn't really fit in with Brandon's crowd. You understand, right? I drove home that night with tears streaming down my face. My daughter was ashamed of me, of the life we'd built together, of everything I represented. Over the next few months, I tried to stay involved in the wedding planning, but I was shut out at every turn. Constance and Emma made all the decisions without consulting me. The venue, the menu, the flowers, the music. When I suggested including a reading from a poem my late husband had loved, Emma dismissed it immediately. That's too sentimental and unsophisticated, Mom. We're going for elegant and refined. I wasn't invited to the bridal shower. 70 women attended, all from the country club set, as Emma called them. When I asked why I hadn't been included, Emma said I wouldn't have felt comfortable. You don't know those people, Mom. It would have been awkward. But the moment that truly broke my heart came when I saw Facebook photos from a mother-daughter spa day. Emma had spent the afternoon with Constance, getting facials and massages, laughing together in matching white robes. When I mentioned it, Emma's response was casual and cutting. Constance understands the world Brandon and I are entering. She's helping me adjust. I kept trying. I offered to help with wedding favors, programs, place cards, anything. Emma gave me busy work, stuffing envelopes, organizing RSVPs, tasks she could have given to anyone. 2 weeks before the wedding, I went shopping for my mother of the bride dress. I'd saved for months, pinching pennies, skipping dinners out with friends. I found a beautiful lavender gown at a department store. It was modest but elegant, and it made me feel special. I sent Emma a photo. Her response came an hour later. That's what you're wearing? Constance is wearing Valentino. Can't you find something more elevated? I stared at my phone, hands shaking. This is the best I can afford, Emma. Never mind. It's fine. Her words said fine, but her tone said it was anything but. The week of the wedding, I arrived at the venue early to help set up. The Rosewood Estate was stunning. A historic mansion with manicured gardens, marble fountains, and ballrooms with crystal chandeliers. It looked like something from a movie. Constance was already there, directing an army of vendors like a general commanding troops. When she saw me, she handed me a clipboard. Alida. Wonderful. Can you make sure the chair covers are properly tied, and the place cards need to be arranged alphabetically? She spoke to me like I was hired help. I swallowed my pride and did what she asked. What else could I do? This was my daughter's wedding day. I wanted it to be perfect for her, even if I was being treated like an outsider. The wedding party arrived for photos, a group of beautiful young people in designer clothes. They were all Brandon's wealthy friends and Emma's new society acquaintances. None of my daughter's childhood friends were there. None of the girls she'd grown up with. They hadn't made the aesthetic cut. When Emma arrived, she looked like a princess. Her dress was stunning, her makeup flawless, her hair arranged in an elegant updo. I started crying the moment I saw her, my baby girl. But when I approached to hug her, she held up a hand. "Careful, Mom. Don't mess up my makeup." The photographer gathered everyone for pre-ceremony shots. Family photos, he called them. He arranged Brandon's family first: Richard, Constance, Brandon, and his sister. They looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Then he turned to Emma. "And the bride's family?" There was an awkward pause. The photographer looked around. "Just you?" he asked me. Emma's voice was quiet. "Yes, just her. No mention of her father. No acknowledgement that I'd raised her alone for 10 years. No tribute to the sacrifices made. Just her." The ceremony took place in the garden. 300 guests filled white chairs, arranged in perfect rows. A string quartet played classical music. Emma walked down the aisle on Richard's arm because Constance had suggested that having her future father-in-law escort her would be more appropriate than walking alone. I sat in the front row by myself, watching my daughter get married while trying not to sob. The ceremony was beautiful but impersonal. The officiant talked about love and partnership and building a future together. There was no mention of Emma's childhood, no stories about her father, no acknowledgement of where she came from. It was as if her life before Brandon didn't exist. During the family photos after the ceremony, the photographer initially forgot to include me. He was arranging shots of Brandon's family when Constance said, "Oh yes, we should probably get one with the bride's mother too." The word probably stung. I stood next to Emma in my lavender dress, smiling for the camera while my heart cracked into pieces. The reception was held in the mansion's grand ballroom. Round tables with floor-length linens filled the space. Each centerpiece held dozens of white roses and orchids. Ice sculptures gleamed under the chandelier light. A 12-piece orchestra played on a raised stage. It was the most extravagant event I'd ever attended. I found my assigned seat at a table near the back of the room. I was seated with distant relatives I barely knew, people from Brandon's extended family who made polite conversation before ignoring me. Meanwhile, Constance sat at the head table with Emma and Brandon, laughing and toasting like she was the mother of the bride. Dinner was served, 5 courses of food I couldn't name, tiny portions arranged artistically on oversized plates. Everyone around me seemed to know exactly which fork to use for which course. I watched and copied, feeling increasingly out of place. Halfway through the meal, Emma stood to give a speech. She tapped her champagne glass with a fork, and the room fell silent. She looked radiant under the soft lights, happy and confident, in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate with us." She paused, smiling at the crowd. "I want to thank some very special people. First, my incredible mother-in-law, Constance. The way she emphasized those words made my stomach turn. You've shown me what elegance and grace truly mean. You've welcomed me into your family with open arms and taught me so much about the kind of woman I want to become. Thank you for everything." Constance beamed. The guests applauded. Emma continued. "And Richard, thank you for treating me like a daughter from day one. Your wisdom and generosity have been overwhelming. I'm so grateful to be joining a family that values excellence and tradition." More applause. Brandon kissed her cheek. Then, almost as an afterthought, Emma glanced in my direction. "And of course, thank you to Alida for everything over the years. Not Mom, not my mother, just Alida. And everything over the years." Like I was a distant aunt who'd sent birthday cards occasionally. The applause was polite and brief. Emma moved on immediately to thanking the wedding planner and the caterers. I excused myself to the restroom, fighting back tears. I locked myself in a stall and pressed my hands to my face, trying to hold myself together. When I finally composed myself enough to return to the reception, something had changed. There was chaos near the gift table. A cluster of people stood around it, voices raised. The gift box where guests had been placing cash envelopes sat open on the table, clearly disturbed. Money was scattered across the white tablecloth. Brandon's cousin, a young woman in a sequined dress who'd been assigned to watch the table, was nearly hysterical. Someone took money from the box. I only stepped away for a minute to use the restroom, and when I came back, it was open. Cash is missing. My heart sank. This was a disaster. On Emma's perfect wedding day. Then the cousin said something that made my blood run cold. I saw someone in a lavender dress near the table earlier. When I was getting a drink, I didn't think anything of it at the time. Every eye in the vicinity turned to look at me. I was the only person at the entire wedding wearing lavender. Emma rushed over, her face pale. "What's going on?" Brandon's cousin repeated her statement, pointing at me. I saw her near the gift table. Emma looked at me, and instead of the immediate defense I expected from my daughter, I saw suspicion flash across her face. Doubt, accusation. Constance appeared beside her, placing a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. "We need to handle this carefully. We can't have scandal at the wedding." She looked directly at me. "We should search anyone who was near that table." I stood frozen, humiliated, as 300 guests began to whisper and stare. "Emma, I didn't touch anything. You know I wouldn't." But Emma wasn't listening to me. She was listening to Constance, who was whispering urgently in her ear. I saw Emma's expression harden. What happened next will haunt me for the rest of my life. Emma stepped forward, her wedding dress rustling, her face contorted with an emotion I'd never seen her direct at me before. Pure rage. "How could you?" Her voice was loud enough to carry across the ballroom. The orchestra had stopped playing. Conversations died. Everyone was watching us. "Emma, please. I didn't do anything. Let's talk about this privately." But she was beyond reason. "On my wedding day? You did this on my wedding day?" Her voice rose higher. "You've always been jealous, haven't you? Jealous that I found someone successful. Jealous that I'm marrying into a real family with real money. You couldn't afford any of this, so you decided to steal it." The words hit me like physical blows. "Emma, how can you say that? I would never." "Empty your purse." Constance's voice was cold and commanding. "If you have nothing to hide, empty your purse right now." 300 people waited. My hands trembled as I clutched my small evening bag. "This is humiliating." "I'm your mother." Emma's face twisted. "You're not my mother. Not anymore. You're just a bitter old woman who can't stand to see me happy." She was shouting now, her carefully cultivated refinement completely gone. "Get out. Get out of my wedding. You're not family anymore. You're nothing to me." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. I could see phones being raised to record this moment. Constance added quietly, almost gently, "We should call the police." That broke through my shock. I looked at my daughter, this stranger in a wedding dress, and I made a choice. I would not beg. I would not defend myself to people who had already decided I was guilty. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I straightened my spine, lifted my chin, and walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the marble floor. The crowd parted like water, everyone stepping back as if I carried a disease. I could hear whispers following me. Can you believe it? Her own daughter's wedding. How desperate do you have to be? Poor Emma. What a nightmare. I walked through those ornate doors and into the cool night air. I walked across the gravel parking lot to my old sedan, parked among the Mercedes and BMWs and Teslas. I got in, closed the door, and sat in the darkness. Only then did I let myself cry. Great, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. My daughter had just publicly destroyed me. She'd chosen her new family over the woman who'd raised her. She'd believed, without a moment's hesitation, that I was capable of theft. I drove home in a daze, still wearing my lavender gown, my mascara streaked down my cheeks. The roads were empty at that hour. I felt completely alone in the world. When I got home, I couldn't bear to go inside immediately. I sat in my driveway, looking at the house where I'd raised Emma, the kitchen window where we'd baked cookies together, the front door where I'd taken her first day of school photos, the porch where we'd sat on summer evenings, talking about her dreams. Where had it all gone wrong? When had my daughter become someone capable of such cruelty? Had I failed her somehow? Had I not prepared her for the real world? Had I sheltered her too much, loved her too much, made her think the world revolved around her? I finally went inside and walked straight to Emma's childhood bedroom. I hadn't changed it much since she'd moved out. Her old posters were still on the walls. Participation ribbons from school events hung from a bulletin board. Her bookshelf still held the books we'd read together. I picked up her high school yearbook and flipped through the pages. There she was, smiling in her graduation photo, voted most likely to make a difference. I'd been so proud that day. I opened her desk drawer and found old report cards, perfect attendance certificates, a Mother's Day card she'd made in 3rd grade. The front showed a crayon drawing of the two of us holding hands. Inside, in her childish handwriting, it said, "Best mom in the world. I love you forever." I held that card and cried until I had no tears left. My phone was buzzing constantly, messages flooding in. Some were from wedding guests I didn't know, people sending messages of shock and judgment. Unbelievable behavior. You should be ashamed. How could you do that to your own daughter? Others were from Emma's new social circle, people I'd never met. Constance was right about you. Emma is better off without you. But there was one message that stood out. It was from Helen, my best friend and fellow retired teacher. I saw what happened. Someone sent me a video. "Alita, I know you. I've known you for 30 years. There is no way you did this. Something is very wrong. Call me." I called her at 2 a.m. She answered on the first ring. Helen's voice was fierce and protective. "That girl has lost her mind. I don't care if it was her wedding day. What she did to you was unforgivable. I can't believe she thinks I would steal from her. She doesn't think that." Helen's voice was firm. She wanted to think that. "There's a difference. Someone set you up, Alita. And I think we both know who." The thought hadn't fully formed in my mind until Helen said it out loud. "You think Constance? Who else benefits from you being removed from Emma's life? Who else has been working to drive a wedge between you two from the beginning? This wasn't about missing money. This was about erasing you." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Emma's old room, watching the sun come up, thinking about everything Helen had said. Could someone really be that calculating, that cruel? At 7 a.m, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Mrs. Thornton?" The voice was male, professional. "This is Marcus Chen from the Rosewood Estate. I'm the venue manager. I'm very sorry to call so early, but I think you need to come back to the venue. There's something you need to see." My heart raced. What is it? "We review all security footage after events for insurance purposes. I was going through last night's recordings, and I found something concerning, something about the gift table incident. I think you'll want to see this before we send the footage to the family. It'll be there in 30 minutes. I drove back to the scene of my humiliation, my stomach in knots. What could the footage possibly show? Marcus met me at a side entrance. He was a kind-looking man in his 40s, dressed in a suit despite the early hour. He looked troubled. "Mrs. Thornton, I want you to know that I've worked hundreds of weddings at this venue. I've never seen a mother treated the way you were last night. When I watched the security footage, I knew I had to call you immediately. He led me to his office, a small room filled with monitors showing various camera angles of the estate. He sat down at his computer and pulled up the footage from the previous night. The video showed the gift table from multiple angles throughout the evening. Guests approached, placed envelopes in the decorative box, chatted briefly, and moved on. Everything looked normal. Then Marcus fast-forwarded to 8:47 in the evening. "Watch this," he said quietly. The timestamp showed the exact time I'd been in the restroom, crying and trying to compose myself. On screen, the ballroom was full of guests eating dinner. The gift table sat unattended in the corner. Then a figure approached the table, a woman wearing a cream-colored shawl and a champagne-colored dress. She moved with purpose, glancing around quickly before opening the gift box. Her movements were efficient and practiced. She removed several thick envelopes and tucked them smoothly into a large designer handbag. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. Marcus zoomed in on the woman's face. It was Constance. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. She stole from her own son's wedding? Marcus nodded grimly. That's not all. He pulled up another clip from earlier in the evening. This is from about 20 minutes before the theft. The footage showed Constance in conversation with Brandon's cousin, the girl who'd been assigned to watch the gift table. Constance was pointing across the room, gesturing toward me, then toward the gift table. The conversation lasted less than a minute, but the intent was clear. "She was setting you up," Marcus said. "She told that girl to watch for someone in a lavender dress." My mind was reeling. This was premeditated, planned. But why go to such lengths? "There's more," Marcus said softly. "This is from the rehearsal dinner last night." He showed me footage from a different location, a private dining room. The timestamp showed the night before the wedding. In a quiet corner, away from other guests, Constance sat with Emma. The audio was faint, but Marcus had enhanced it. Constance's voice came through clearly. "If you want to truly join our family, you need to cut ties with your past. People like your mother will always hold you back. She doesn't understand our world, and she'll only embarrass you. Tomorrow might be the perfect opportunity to make a clean break. Trust me, darling." Emma's face was visible on the screen. She looked uncertain, conflicted. But then she nodded slowly. "You really think so?" "I know so." Constance's voice was warm, maternal, persuasive. "I'm looking out for you. We both are. This is what's best." I felt sick. The accusation at the wedding hadn't been impulsive rage. It had been orchestrated. Constance had planned to frame me, and Emma had agreed to cut me out of her life. The double betrayal was almost too much to bear. Not just accused, but deliberately set up by my own daughter. Marcus handed me a USB drive. "This has all the footage, multiple angles, audio, everything. I've made copies for our records, but you should have this." He paused. "I've worked in this industry for 20 years. I've seen family drama. I've seen fights, but I've never seen anything this calculated. Whatever you decide to do with this information, you deserve to know the truth." I took the drive with shaking hands. "Thank you. You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did. What happened to you last night was wrong, and between you and me, I've dealt with Constance at previous events. She's not a good person. She treats vendors like servants. She's rude and entitled. But this is something else entirely." I drove home, clutching the USB drive like it was made of gold. My mind was racing. I had proof, undeniable evidence that I was innocent, that Constance was the thief, that the whole thing had been a setup. My first instinct was to call Emma immediately, to scream at her, to demand an explanation, to shove the truth in her face, but something stopped me. Maybe it was years of teaching experience, knowing that people rarely learn when they're defensive. Maybe it was simple hurt and anger, Or maybe it was strategy. I sat in my kitchen and thought about what I really wanted. Did I want revenge? Did I want to see Constance arrested? Did I want Emma to grovel and apologize? No. What I wanted was for my daughter to understand what she'd done, to face the full weight of her choices, and to decide for herself who she wanted to be. Helen came over that afternoon with coffee and sandwiches. I showed her the footage. Her face went through a range of emotions: shock, anger, disgust. That evil woman. We need to go to the police right now. I considered it. But Constance could claim she was securing the money, that it was a misunderstanding. And Emma could deny knowing about the setup. They'd close ranks. The wealthy always do. Helen studied my face. You have a plan. I'm working on one. Over the next few days, while Emma and Brandon were on their honeymoon in the Maldives, I did research. I looked into Constance and Richard's background. I found society page articles, charity gala photos, business profiles. They looked perfect on the surface. But I dug deeper. I found older articles from 15 years ago about a scandal involving Richard's business partner, accusations of fraud, a settlement that was buried quickly with money and lawyers. I found public records showing that Richard and Constance had recently taken out a large loan against their Connecticut estate. They weren't as wealthy as they appeared. The facade was starting to crack. The missing wedding money amounted to approximately $18,000 in cash. A significant amount, but not enough to ruin someone like Constance, unless she needed it. Unless the financial pressure was greater than anyone knew, Constance had seen an opportunity. Take the money she needed and simultaneously remove the embarrassing lower-class mother-in-law. 2 problems solved with 1 crime. Emma posted honeymoon photos on social media, pristine beaches, luxury overwater bungalows, champagne at sunset. She looked happy. There was no mention of me, not in the wedding album she shared online, not in her captions. It was as if Eid never existed. Comments from her new friends congratulated her. A few mentioned hearing about drama at the reception. Emma responded publicly. Some people just can't be happy for others. We've moved on. That response hardened my resolve. She wasn't even questioning what had happened. She'd completely accepted the narrative that I was a thief and a burden. On the 5th day after the wedding, I received a certified letter. It was from a law firm in Connecticut. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a cease and desist order. Constance's attorneys demanded that I never contact Emma or Brandon again. The letter accused me of harassment and attempted extortion. It threatened legal action if I continued to spread false accusations about the wedding theft. Constance was trying to intimidate me into silence before Emma returned and possibly had second thoughts. She was covering her tracks. But the letter had the opposite effect. It told me that Constance was scared. She wouldn't bother with legal threats if she felt secure. This meant I had power. The footage was a loaded gun, and she didn't know I had it. I called my friend Patricia, who'd retired from practicing law 5 years ago. I showed her everything: the footage, the cease and desist letter, the research I'd done. Patricia's legal mind went to work. You could go to the police. The footage is clear evidence of theft, but Constance has money and lawyers. It would turn into a he said, she said situation, and Emma would likely side with her new family. You'd win eventually, but it would be ugly and public, and it might not give you what you really want. What do I really want? Patricia looked at me seriously. You want your daughter back. You want her to see the truth and choose you. That won't happen through lawyers and courtrooms. That has to come from her. So what do? You make her face the consequences of her choice. You show her what she's really aligned herself with, and then you let her decide. Emma and Brandon returned from their honeymoon on a Tuesday. I knew because Emma's Instagram showed them at the airport, tanned and glowing, with captions about returning to real life. I waited one more day, then I sent a text message to Emma. "We need to talk. I have information about what really happened at your wedding. Meet me tomorrow at Oak Street Cafe at 2 in the afternoon. Come alone." I watched the three dots appear and disappear several times as Emma typed and deleted responses. Finally, an hour later, she replied, "I have nothing to say to you." My response was calculated. Then, just listen. 2 in the afternoon tomorrow. If you don't come, I'll take what I know to the police and to every wedding guest whose email I have. Your choice. The threat worked. The next day, Emma arrived at the cafe at 2:15, clearly making me wait to establish some kind of power. She wore designer sunglasses and carried a handbag that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her honeymoon tan was already fading, but she looked polished and put together. She sat down across from me without removing her sunglasses. "Make this quick. I have a meeting with Constance at 4. Of course she did. I slid my laptop across the table and opened the security footage file. "Watch this." Emma's body language was resistant at first, arms crossed, posture defensive. But as the footage played, showing Constance approaching the gift table, stealing the money, and tucking it into her handbag, Emma's posture changed. Her arms dropped. She leaned forward. Her face went pale. I played the next clip. The one showing Constance setting me up, pointing me out to Brandon's cousin. Then I played the rehearsal dinner footage. Constance's voice filled the quiet cafe. "People like your mother will always hold you back. Tomorrow might be the perfect opportunity to make a clean break." Emma's hand went to her mouth. On the screen, her younger self from just 2 weeks ago nodded in agreement. When the footage ended, Emma sat in silence for a long moment. Then she started to cry. Quiet tears that slipped out from under her sunglasses. I didn't know she was going to steal. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I thought she just meant I should naturally distance myself from you. At the wedding, when the money went missing and they said someone in lavender, I assumed. You assumed I was guilty. Without even asking me. Without defending me for even 1 second." Emma pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. "You don't understand the pressure. Brandon's family, their expectations. I needed to fit in. Constance kept telling me that you were holding me back. That I needed to be stronger, more independent. So you threw away the woman who raised you? Who worked double shifts to put you through college? Who sacrificed everything so you could have opportunities I never had?" Emma's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I got caught up in everything. The money, the status, the lifestyle. Constance made it all seem so important. She made you seem small and embarrassing. I was embarrassing to you." I said it flatly, making her hear it. Yes, Emma's honesty was brutal. In that world, with those people, you were your little house, your teacher's salary, your department store dresses. It all felt so small compared to what I was stepping into. And now that you know Constance framed me, that she stole from your wedding and let you believe your own mother was a thief? Emma wiped her eyes. "What are you going to do? Are you going to the police?" "That depends on you." I let the words hang in the air. "Here's what's going to happen. I've already been invited by Marcus, who knows the family through venue connections. I'll be there. You can either tell the truth yourself, or I will." Emma's voice rose in panic. "You can't. You'll ruin everything. Brandon's family will hate me. I could lose him." I stood up to leave. "Then you'll understand what it means to lose family. Sunday dinner. Your choice." I was almost to the door when Emma called after me. "Wait. There's something else you don't know." I turned back. Emma's voice shook. "Constance has been telling Brandon that you're mentally unstable. She's been planting seeds since we got engaged. She told him, "You might cause problems, that you have emotional issues, that you've always been jealous of successful people." Brandon believes her completely. He thinks you really did steal that money. If you expose Constance, he might choose his family over me. I could lose everything. The fear in her eyes was real. She genuinely believed her marriage might not survive the truth. I looked at my daughter and felt something shift inside me. Not softening, exactly, but clarity. Then you'll understand what I lost. You'll know what it feels like when someone you love chooses someone else over you, when everything you built together crumbles because of lies and manipulation. You'll finally understand, Emma. I walked out of the cafe, leaving my daughter crying at the table. The next few days were tense. Emma sent text messages begging me to reconsider. "Constance doesn't know you have that footage. We could use it as leverage privately. We don't have to make this public." I didn't respond. She tried calling. I didn't answer. Finally, on Saturday night, she sent one last message. "I'll do it. I'll tell them tomorrow. I'm terrified, but I'll do it. You deserve that much." I sat in my quiet house, looking at that message, and wondered if I was doing the right thing. Was I being vindictive? Was I punishing Emma too harshly? But then I remembered her face when she screamed at me to get out. I remembered the humiliation of walking through that crowd while people recorded my shame on their phones. I remembered lying awake all night wondering if I'd failed as a mother. No, Emma needed to face this. She needed to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't just apologize and erase the harm you've done. Sunday arrived. I dressed carefully that morning. Nothing too expensive, but nothing apologetic either. A simple navy dress, pearl earrings my late husband had given me for our 20th anniversary, low heels. I wanted to look dignified, strong. The drive to Richard and Constance's estate took 45 minutes. The property was even more impressive in daylight. A sprawling brick mansion with white columns, surrounded by acres of manicured lawn, a circular driveway with a fountain in the center. This was old money, or at least the appearance of it. Marcus had arranged my invitation under the pretense of discussing future venue events with Richard, who sat on the Rosewood Estates board. It was thin cover, but it got me in the door. A housekeeper answered and led me to a formal dining room. The table could easily seat 20 people. Today it was set for 6. Crystal glasses, china plates, silver that probably cost more than my car. The family was gathering when I entered. Richard stood by the window, drink in hand. Constance sat at one end of the table, flipping through a magazine. Brandon's sister was checking her phone. Brandon and Emma sat together, Emma's face pale and drawn. When Constance saw me, her entire body went rigid. Her magazine slipped from her hands. "Alida, what are you doing here?" Richard turned, looking confused. "You know each other?" Before anyone could answer, Emma stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear. "I invited her." "Well, Marcus did, but I asked him to. We need to talk about something. About the wedding." Constance's voice was sharp. "Darling, we don't need to rehash that unpleasantness." "No." Emma's voice was stronger now. "You need to hear this. All of you." Brandon looked between Emma and me, clearly confused. "Emma, what's going on?" Emma picked up a remote control and turned on the large television mounted on the dining room wall. "My mother didn't steal from our wedding. She was framed." The security footage began to play. The room fell completely silent. Everyone watched as Constance, clearly visible on screen, approached the gift table and stole the money. The video was damning, undeniable. Richard set down his glass with a sharp clink. Brandon leaned forward, staring at the screen in disbelief. Constance's face had gone from pink to white to gray. "That's not what it looks like." Emma played the next clip. the one showing Constance setting me up. Then the rehearsal dinner audio played. Constance's voice filled the room. People like your mother will always hold you back. Tomorrow might be the perfect opportunity to make a clean break. Richard stood abruptly. Constance? His voice was low and dangerous. Constance tried to maintain composure. This is taken out of context. I was protecting the money. I was going to give it to Brandon later. Then why did you put it in your handbag? I spoke for the first time since entering the room. And why did you set me up to take the blame? Constance's composure cracked. That woman is beneath us. She was dragging Emma down. I was protecting our family's reputation. Emma deserves better than to be constantly reminded of her working-class background. The words hung in the air like poison. Richard's face had turned red. You stole from our son's wedding and framed an innocent woman to protect our reputation? You've destroyed it. Brandon was staring at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Mom, how could you do this? Constance stood, defensive now. I did it for you, for this family, for Emma's future. That woman. She gestured at me with contempt. She would have been a constant embarrassment. Can you imagine bringing her to country club events? To business dinners? I was solving a problem. By making me look like a criminal? Emma's voice broke. By making me accuse my own mother of theft in front of 300 people? You should be thanking me. Constance's voice turned cold. I cut the dead weight for you. Now you can truly be part of this family without that anchor pulling you down. Richard walked to a sideboard and opened a drawer. He pulled out a checkbook. How much did you take? Constance crossed her arms. I don't have to answer that. How much? $18,300. Her voice was defiant. Richard wrote a check with sharp, angry strokes. Then he walked to Constance and held it out. You will return every penny. Now. And then you will apologize to Alida. I won't apologize for protecting this family. The room erupted. Richard and Constance began arguing in harsh whispers. Brandon stood and paced, running his hands through his hair. His sister watched everything with wide eyes. Emma walked over to me. Her face was streaked with tears. Mom, I'm so sorry. I was stupid and shallow and cruel. I wanted so badly to fit into this world that I abandoned the person who mattered most. I humiliated you publicly. I chose impressing them over the woman who raised me alone, who gave up everything for me, who worked herself to exhaustion so I could go to college. The entire room heard her confession. Everyone stopped and turned to listen. Emma continued, her voice raw. I understand if you can't forgive me. What I did was unforgivable. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I became. And I hate it. Brandon, who had been silent through Emma's confession, finally spoke. Emma, I fell in love with you because you were different from the society girls. My mother kept pushing at me. You were real. You had substance. You came from somewhere real. His voice was quiet but firm. If I wanted someone fake, I would have married any of the country club daughters Mom approved of. I wanted you. He turned to Constance. I thought you welcomed Emma into our family, but you were remaking her, erasing who she really was. Constance opened her mouth to respond, but Richard cut her off. Enough. He looked at me. Mrs. Thornton, I apologize for my wife's behavior and for not seeing what was happening. You're welcome in this home any time. Constance clearly let her prejudices override her judgment and her basic decency. Constance sat in furious silence, the check still in Richard's hand. The afternoon dissolved into difficult conversations. Richard insisted Constance write a formal apology letter. Brandon and Emma talked quietly in the corner. His sister left, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama. I sat at that expensive table in that beautiful house and watched my daughter finally stand up for what was right, even though it cost her the approval she'd been desperately seeking. Before I left, Emma walked me to my car. We stood in the circular driveway, autumn leaves swirling around our feet. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know." I was honest. "You broke my heart, Emma. You can't just apologize and erase that." "I know. Can we try? Can we start to rebuild?" I looked at my daughter and saw genuine remorse. Not just fear of consequences, but real understanding of what she'd done. "Not start over," I said. "Move forward. You can't erase what happened. But you can learn from it. You can be better." "I will be, I promise. Words are easy. Show me with actions." She nodded, tears spilling over again. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Emma didn't magically transform back into the daughter I remembered. Healing doesn't work that way. But she tried. She started coming over for Sunday dinners at my little house with the outdated wallpaper and old appliances. At first, it was awkward. We'd sit at my kitchen table, the same one where she'd done homework as a child, and struggled to find safe topics of conversation. But gradually, something shifted. She started asking about my week, about Helen and my other friends, about the volunteer work I did at the library. She listened like she actually cared. Brandon came with her sometimes. He was kind and respectful, and he never made me feel small. I think Emma's betrayal had shaken him too. Had seen a side of his family he didn't like. Emma started therapy. She told me about it one Sunday over coffee. "I need to understand how I lost myself so completely, how I became someone capable of what I did to you." I appreciated that she was taking responsibility, doing the work to change. Constance and Richard's marriage suffered. Richard moved into their Connecticut house while Constance stayed in the Hamptons property. Emma heard through Brandon that they were in counseling, trying to salvage 30 years of marriage after Constance's actions had revealed deeper issues. The wedding money was returned with a formal apology letter from Constance. It was stiff and clearly written under duress, but it was something. Emma and Brandon bought their own home, a modest place by their standards, creating physical and emotional distance from Constance's influence. Emma went back to work at her marketing firm. She stopped posting constantly on social media about luxury and status. 3 months after the wedding, Emma asked if she could volunteer at my old elementary school. "I need to reconnect with who I was before all of this," she explained. "Before I got so caught up in what other people thought of me." I watched her read to second graders, her designer clothes traded for jeans and a simple sweater, and I saw glimpses of the girl I'd raised. One evening, we were sitting on my back porch, the same porch where we'd spent so many summer nights when she was growing up. Emma turned to me with tears in her eyes. "How did you forgive me? After everything I did, how are you even sitting here with me?" "I'm not sure I have forgiven you completely," I said honestly. "Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process. Every day, I choose to move forward. Some days that's easier than others. Do you think you ever will? Fully forgive me?" "I think so. But Emma, you need to understand something. Our relationship will never be exactly what it was before. You can't unbreak glass. You can put it back together, but the cracks will always be visible." She nodded, accepting that hard truth. "I learned something through this whole ordeal," I continued. "Betrayal by a stranger is painful, but betrayal by your own child is devastating. It made me question everything. Every choice I made as a mother, every sacrifice, every moment of pride I felt in you. It shattered my understanding of who you were." Emma was crying now. "I'm so sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "You can't make it up to me. That's not how this works. You can only be better going forward." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of kids playing in a neighbor's yard. But I also learned, I continued, that people can lose their way and find it again. You got seduced by wealth and status. In trying to climb higher, you lost your footing entirely. But the moment you faced the truth, you started climbing back to who you really are. And that takes courage. Emma reached for my hand. I almost lost everything that mattered, chasing things that don't. Yes, you did. And maybe you needed to almost lose it to understand its value. She squeezed my hand. Thank you for not giving up on me. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for me, because giving up on you would have meant they won. Constance wanted to erase me from your life, and I refused to let that happen. I fought back because I deserved better. Whether you came back to me or not, I was going to hold my head high. You walked out of that wedding with so much dignity. I watched the video someone posted online. You didn't cry, you didn't beg, you just left. I was so ashamed when I saw it later. Dignity was all I had left in that moment. I wasn't going to let them take that too. As autumn turned to winter, Emma and I found a new rhythm. We weren't mother and daughter the way we used to be. We were mother and daughter the way we were now. Different, but maybe stronger in some ways. Certainly more honest. On Christmas Eve, Emma brought Brandon to my house for dinner. Just the three of us, in my little dining room. We ate pot roast and potatoes. Nothing fancy. We talked and laughed, and for the first time in months, it felt almost normal. After Brandon went to the car to take a phone call, Emma helped me with dishes. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think what Constance did, trying to erase you from my life, do you think that worked at all? I dried a plate slowly, thinking, for a while, yes, you erased me yourself. You were ashamed of me. You didn't want me at your shower. You barely acknowledged me at your wedding. You believed I was capable of theft without a second thought. In those moments, Constance succeeded. Emma's face fell, but, I continued, she also showed you who she really is, and in doing that, she showed you who you were becoming. Sometimes we need to see the ugliest version of ourselves to find our way back. So, in the end, she failed. You're standing in my kitchen doing dishes. You came back. Because you fought for me. Even after everything I did, you fought. No, I corrected her. I fought for myself, for my dignity, for the truth, for justice. You came back on your own. You made that choice. That distinction seemed important to her. She nodded slowly. As I stood there in my outdated kitchen with my daughter, I realized something. The video footage revealed Constance's crime, but Emma's confession revealed her character. The footage proved I was innocent, but Emma's willingness to face the truth proved she was capable of growth. Justice came not from the law or public vindication, but from watching my daughter recognize her mistakes and work to be better. The lesson I learned, and the one I hope Emma learned too, is this. Grace isn't pretending nothing happened. It's not sweeping hurt under the rug or minimizing pain. Grace is acknowledging the full weight of what was broken and choosing to move forward anyway, with eyes wide open. My daughter is my family again, not because she never betrayed me, but because she owned what she did, apologized sincerely, and changed her behavior. That's what family really is. Not people who never hurt you, but people who face what they've done and fight to make it right. We can't go back to who we were before. That mother and daughter don't exist anymore. But we can be who we are now, wiser, more honest, more careful with each other's hearts. And maybe that's enough. So I ask you this. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone who broke your heart? How did you find the strength to move forward? Was there someone in your life who hurt you deeply, but eventually earned their way back? Or are you still struggling with whether to forgive someone who wronged you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's facing a similar situation. And if this story touched you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about real-life struggles and the strength it takes to overcome them. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that dignity and truth always matter, even when everything else falls apart. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gave you something to think about. Remember that you're stronger than you know, and you deserve to be treated with respect and love, always. Take care of yourselves and each other.